It was almost midnight, and the city outside my window hummed with a rhythm I'd grown to love. Distant sirens, the rumble of a subway, the occasional blare of a taxi horn. Inside my cramped apartment, though, it was a different kind of buzz. My webcam light cast a soft glow on my face, illuminating a carefully curated background of bookshelves and a half-empty coffee mug. My voice, deeper and more confident than my usual mumble, filled the room. All right, folks, another Tuesday, another chaotic deep dive into why pineapple on pizza is a crime against humanity. I was Echo, the internet's favorite anonymous armchair philosopher, master debater, and occasional comedian. Online, I was a god, witty, sharp, always ready with a comeback. My chat scrolled like a digital waterfall, a mix of laughing emojis, burning questions, and the usual trolls I effortlessly swatted away. I loved it. This was where I truly lived, where my real self, Liam Miller, the guy who preferred sweatpants and solitude, could vanish. My anonymity was my fortress, my pride. Nobody, and I mean nobody, in my real life knew Echo existed. That was the unshakable truth I built my entire dual existence upon. Honestly, sometimes I wondered if I was a bit nuts, living this double life. But then again, who wasn't? Everyone had their online personas, their carefully constructed facades. Mine just happened to be, well, a little more popular, and a lot more fun than my day job crunching numbers. I remember being a kid, maybe 9 or 10, when we first moved to that old house in the Boston suburbs. It had this ridiculously spooky attic, all dusty and full of forgotten treasures, or so I thought. One afternoon, Mom was on a cleaning rampage, bless her heart, and somehow I ended up locked in there. Just for an hour, she said later, but for a 9-year-old, an hour in the pitch-black, cobweb-draped attic felt like an eternity. The air was thick and tasted like old wood and fear. I pressed myself against a stack of boxes, trying to breathe, trying not to imagine the things lurking in the corners. Then it started. A faint, rhythmic creak. It wasn't loud, just persistent, like something being gently pulled across the floorboards directly above my head. My heart hammered against my ribs. I froze, holding my breath until my lungs screamed. Every creak was a tiny hammer blow to my already terrified little heart. I pictured long, bony fingers dragging something heavy, unseen, just inches away from me. I thought for sure some attic monster had finally decided it was snack time. When Mom finally found me, face streaked with tears and snot, I stammered out the story about the creaking. She, being the pragmatic mom she was, immediately brushed it off. "Oh, honey, that's just an old house settling," she'd said, ruffling my hair. "Or maybe a little mouse. You were just scared. Your imagination was running wild." And I, a kid desperate to believe in safety, swallowed it whole. That explanation, so simple and reasonable, became my default. The scary creaks, just a trick of the mind, my overactive imagination. Over 20 years later, it was a funny anecdote, a testament to how sensitive I used to be. Not a single scary bone left in my body. Nope, just good old rational Liam. Back in my New York apartment, the stream was still going strong. I just finished a rant about reality TV, and the chat was ablaze with agreement and dissent. A quick glance at my internet connection showed the familiar flickering. Seriously, I muttered, more to myself than the camera. My internet's been acting up worse than my ex after a breakup, always dropping out at the worst possible moments. I knew it was the building's ancient wiring. Old buildings, old problems. Sometimes I swear it was because the guy next door, Mr. Henderson, was somehow siphoning my bandwidth with his, well, whatever it was in there. The guy was a mystery wrapped in an enigma, with a side of awkward staring. I'd seen Mr. Henderson a few times in the hallway. He always wore the same faded gray sweatshirt, his shoulders hunched, his eyes fixed on something just beyond me. He never said much, just a curt nod if he acknowledged you at all. He had this unsettling habit of just appearing, like a phantom. One minute the hallway was empty, The next, he'd be standing by his door, watching me struggle with my groceries, or just looking vaguely in my direction with those unreadable eyes. I'd decided he was my secret anti-fan. It was the only logical explanation. Who else would look at me like that? Probably jealous of my internet fame. The poor, lonely soul. "Echo, your mic just cut out for a second there," someone typed in chat. "Are you okay?" "Just my ancient internet, folks," I chirped, flashing a reassuring grin. "Seriously, I pay for premium service, and it feels like I'm still on dial-up. Guess I need to complain to Mr. Peterson again." Mr. Peterson was our building super, a kind old man who knew everything about everyone. I paused, scanning a particularly insightful comment. Then my gaze drifted to the bare wall behind me. This wall is looking a bit empty, isn't it? I mused aloud, a thought popping into my head. Maybe I should put up that old dusty photo frame. The one with the faded picture of me and my cat from college. It's probably got dust bunnies the size of golf balls on it by now. Before I could even finish the thought, before I even decided if I would actually do it, a new comment flashed across my screen. It wasn't a reply to my observation. It just appeared, stark and unsettling. Dusty old photo frame. Dust bunnies. My blood ran cold. My mouth, which moments before had been spouting witty banter, snapped shut. I stared at the screen, then at my wall, then back at the screen. My hands, usually so nimble on the keyboard, froze. No way. Absolutely no way. That was exactly what I had just thought. Not just the idea, but the words, the specific phrase. My heart started doing a little jig against my ribs, a rather un-Echo-like beat. "Whoa, okay, mind reader in the chat tonight." I forced a laugh, trying to make it sound casual, witty, anything but the panic rising in my throat. "You guys are quick. Seriously though, that's creepy. Get out of my head." I dismissed it, waved it off. It was just a coincidence, a clever troll maybe. They stalked my streams, picked up on hints, played mind games. They were good, I had to admit, really good. But still, just a troll, nothing more. Then a faint, rhythmic knocking started. Knock, knock, knock. It wasn't loud, but in the quiet of my apartment, it cut through the hum of the city and the chatter of my stream. My eyes flickered towards the apartment door. "Hold on a sec, guys," I announced, trying to sound nonchalant. "Sounds like my neighbors decided to hold a late-night percussion concert. Or maybe he's just out of milk." I knew it was Mr. Henderson. Who else? He was always making some kind of odd noise. Probably just trying to annoy me, to interrupt my stream. That anti-fan. I powered through the rest of the stream, my usual confidence a thin veneer over a growing layer of unease. When I finally logged off, the apartment felt heavier, the silence more pronounced. I checked the peephole, nothing. I looked through the hallway camera I'd installed weeks ago, purely for security, I told myself, definitely not because I was paranoid about Mr. Henderson. Still nothing. A few days later, a strange thing happened. I'd been working on some sensitive documents for my day job, saved on a little USB stick. I always kept it on my desk. But one morning, it was gone. I searched everywhere, tearing my apartment apart, blaming my own forgetfulness. Until later that evening, when I opened my door to grab a package, and there it was, lying neatly on the doormat, right in front of my door. My USB stick, clean, untouched. My stomach did a flip. How? When? I hadn't opened the door all day. I lived alone. It had to be him, Mr. Henderson. He must have seen me drop it, or maybe I'd left the door ajar for a split second and he'd slipped it in, then later decided to place it outside my door just to mess with me. Or maybe he was just being weirdly helpful. It fit his eccentric profile. An anti-fan who was also a benevolent, creepy neighbor. Yeah, that had to be it. It was all Mr. Henderson, the weird recluse next door with his strange habits and his unblinking stares. All of it. I leaned against my door, closing my eyes, taking a deep breath. Just an eccentric guy. A lonely, perhaps mentally unbalanced anti-fan. He was just messing with me, trying to get a reaction. He was harmless, really. Annoying, but harmless. Totally. I hugged that thought close, a warm blanket against the chill that insisted on creeping up my spine. Yeah, just Mr. Henderson. It made perfect sense. Everything was fine, just fine. The city outside kept its promise of endless noise, but inside my apartment, things were getting a little too personal. Another Tuesday, another stream. My mic glowed, my curated bookshelf background looked intellectual AF, and my voice, Echo's voice, was weaving magic about why pop music was basically brain candy. The chat was lit as usual, but my usual swagger felt a bit off. Lately, it wasn't just the internet being a moody teenager. Oh no, it was everything. Okay, for real guys, I chirped, flashing my best charming streamer smile. My internet's been pulling more disappearing acts than my motivation on a Monday morning. It's gotta be Mr. Peterson's fault for not upgrading this prehistoric building's wiring. Or, my neighbor, Mr. Henderson, finally figured out how to drain my bandwidth with his thoughts. I chuckled, but the sound felt thin, like an old dollar bill. The chat exploded with sympathy and memes, but then a comment flashed, making my smile twitch. That crooked painting in the hall, Echo. Did you ever fix it? My breath hitched. The painting? The one I'd literally just walked past 5 minutes ago to grab a soda from the fridge and mentally noted was still slightly off kilter. I hadn't mentioned it. Not online, not offline. It was just a thing I knew, a tiny, insignificant detail of my apartment. Whoa, spooky, I forced out, trying to sound playful. Are you guys spying on me or something? That's next level trolling. I laughed, a little too loud. Just a troll, Liam. A really, really observant troll. The knocking started again. Knock, knock, knock. Faint, rhythmic, right from my front door. It wasn't a casual rap, it was a deliberate, insistent sound. My eyes darted to the door, then back to the screen. Ugh, here we go again, I grumbled, rolling my eyes for the camera. My favorite percussionist next door is at it again. Seriously, does Mr. Henderson ever sleep, or does he just knock? Internally, I was cursing that silent, staring weirdo. He clearly knew when I was live. He was definitely doing this on purpose. What a dedicated anti-fan. A real piece of work, that guy. He probably sat there with a stopwatch, waiting for the perfect moment to disrupt my flow. He truly was something else, that dude. I powered through, my stream ending with me feeling more drained than usual. As soon as I clicked off, the silence slammed down, thick and heavy. I pressed my eye to the peephole. Nothing. Just the dim, lonely hallway light. I checked the hallway camera footage I'd installed a few weeks back. It was always a fuzzy, grainy mess, but tonight it was even worse. A strange static shimmered across the screen, distorting the edges. I squinted, straining to see if Mr. Henderson had been lurking. Nothing concrete, just blurs and shadows. This camera is useless, I thought, a new wave of irritation washing over me. That night, the internet was acting like a total drama queen. It would connect for a glorious 5 seconds, then bam, gone. I went through the whole routine. Check the wires, reboot the router, pray to the tech gods. I did it once, nothing. Twice, still nothing. The third time, as I stared at the flashing lights on the router, a flicker caught my eye. Just beyond the edge of my vision, near the doorframe, a shadow seemed to lengthen. Or did it? I whipped my head around. Empty. Just the usual shadows from the streetlights.
Man, I need more sleep, I muttered, shaking my head. My logical brain was working overtime, telling me I was seeing things because I was tired and frustrated. It's just your old wiring, Liam, and your overactive imagination. Remember the attic? A few days blurred into a week. The strange little incidents piled up like dirty laundry. My favorite blue coffee mug, which I always left on my desk, would sometimes be on the kitchen counter, rinsed out. My remote, always next to the couch, once turned up under my pillow. Each time I'd sigh, blame my scatterbrained self, and then mentally file it under Mr. Henderson's anti-fan shenanigans. He was really committing to the bet. I had to give him that. A true artist of annoyance. But the sheer dedication was starting to get under my skin. Like, how did he know about the crooked painting and the coffee mug? Was he coming into my apartment? The thought sent a cold shiver down my spine, even as I dismissed it. No way. My door is always locked. He's just a super stalker, that's all.
Maybe he has a drone, or really good binoculars. One morning, after another restless night, I woke up with a jolt. The apartment was dead quiet, not even the usual city hum. And then I heard it, a faint, rhythmic creak, creak. Not from the floorboards, not from outside. It was inside my head, clear as day, like a memory playing on repeat. The same sound from that terrifying attic experience when I was a kid. Creak, creak. My skin crawled. I sat bolt upright, heart pounding. "What the hell?" I whispered, my voice rough. I fumbled for my phone, flicking on the flashlight, sweeping it around the room. Empty. Just my messy desk, my unmade bed, and the ghosts of my own tired thoughts. "Okay, Liam, you're officially losing it," I told myself, trying to laugh it off. "You're just sleep-deprived. It's a dream echo." But I couldn't shake the feeling. I needed more definitive proof. My hallway camera was useless, so I went full covert ops. A tiny motion-activated camera disguised as a smoke detector positioned in my living room, facing the front door, and another one hidden in a fake plant facing the windows. There, now let's see what Mr. Henderson is really up to. I spent every spare moment scrutinizing the footage. Hours of my mundane life, me eating cereal, me mumbling to myself, me streaming, me scrolling on my phone. And then there was Mr. Henderson, or glimpses of him at least. I'd watch the hallway camera, eyes glued to the screen, barely breathing. He'd appear, sometimes just standing by his door for what felt like an eternity, staring at my door. Other times he'd walk past, his shoulders hunched, his eyes fixed on something unseen, never looking directly at the camera, never making a suspicious move, just there, like a silent gray specter. He looked so ordinary, so unthreatening, just a quiet, lonely man in a faded gray sweatshirt. He's just an eccentric loner with mental issues, right? I'd tell myself, desperately clinging to the rationalization. He can't be anything else. He's just a really, really dedicated anti-fan who likes to mess with me in bizarre, unsettling ways. That's all. Totally harmless. The evidence was always vague. A blur here, a shadow there. The internet connection dropping just as Mr. Henderson passed by. Coincidence? Or was he using some kind of signal jammer? I'd spend hours trying to sync up the events, drawing frantic timelines, highlighting moments. But it was never conclusive. Just enough to keep my paranoia simmering, but never enough to confirm my wild theory. One particularly stormy night, the power flickered. My stream died instantly. "Seriously?" I yelled, throwing my hands up in frustration. "This is ridiculous!" I stormed to the breaker box in the hallway, flicked the main switch, hoping for a reset. Nothing. I tried again. Still dark. I fumbled for my phone to call Mr. Peterson when I heard it. A soft, scraping sound coming from inside my apartment. I froze, phone in hand. The apartment was pitch black,
lit only by the faint, angry orange glow from the streetlights through my window. The scraping sound continued, a quiet, deliberate drag across the wooden floor. It was definitely inside, and it was coming from my bedroom. My heart leaped into my throat. Mr. Henderson? But how? My door was double locked. I had checked it just before stream. My apartment was a fortress. I stood there, rooted to the spot, listening to the unsettling scrape, scrape. Then a low, guttural murmur. It wasn't words, just a sound, like someone clearing their throat, but deeper, raspier, and definitely not human. It emanated from my bedroom. The hair on my arms stood on end. My hands were clammy. This wasn't Mr. Henderson's usual silent, creepy anti-fan routine. This felt different. This felt wrong. Every fiber of my being screamed to run, but my feet felt glued to the linoleum. The scraping stopped. The murmuring stopped. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. Then, slowly, from the absolute darkness of my bedroom, a faint, almost imperceptible sliver of light appeared. It moved, slowly, steadily, towards the bedroom door. It was the glow of my cell phone screen, the one I'd left on my nightstand. And it was being carried. The glowing rectangle of my phone screen, that familiar beacon of memes and late-night scrolling, was moving, slowly, deliberately, not sliding, not rolling, but definitely being carried from the inky blackness of my bedroom towards the door.
My stomach did a weird flip, like a confused gymnast. This wasn't some Mr. Henderson's latest prank kind of weird. This was my life just became a found footage horror movie kind of weird. My heart was doing a frantic samba against my ribs. My first instinct? Scream. My second? Grab something, anything. My hand landed on a dusty old baseball bat I hadn't touched since high school. Not exactly Captain America's shield, but hey, it had a good swing. I stood there, bat in hand, breathing like I'd just run a marathon I didn't sign up for. The phone light paused at the bedroom doorframe, then, slowly, agonizingly, began to turn the corner into the living room. My eyes, now accustomed to the gloom, made out a shape, a silhouette. Not Mr. Henderson's hunched, quiet frame. This was thinner, taller. It swayed slightly. I squeezed my eyes shut, then flung them open again. Nope, still there. My brain, ever the comedian, decided to offer, oh good, it's not just a hallucination, progress. I wanted to laugh, but my throat felt like sandpaper. Then, just as the figure stepped fully into the dim orange glow from the streetlights filtering through my window, the power flickered back on, just like that. The fluorescent hum of my apartment lights, the gentle whir of my fridge, all sprang back to life. And the figure vanished. Just poof, gone. My phone lay innocently on the floor, right where the silhouette had been standing. The screen was dark. I blinked and blinked again. The bat felt stupidly heavy in my hands. What the actual? I mumbled, my voice a shaky whisper. My logical brain, usually so good at concocting elaborate anti-fan theories, was short-circuiting. There was no way to explain that. No Mr. Henderson with a fishing rod or remote-controlled gadget. That was a thing, in my apartment, carrying my phone. I stood there for a good 5 minutes, bat still clutched, surveying my suddenly too bright, too normal apartment. Every shadow seemed to stretch. Every creak of the old building felt ominous. I swallowed, hard. Okay, Liam, time to stop playing detective and actually get help, I told myself. This wasn't just about bad internet or a weird neighbor anymore. This was a whole new level of nope. I needed answers, real answers. And there was only one person in this building who seemed to know everything about everyone, especially the weirdos. Old Man Peterson, the building superintendent. He usually sat in his little booth by the entrance, looking like a grumpy gnome guarding a treasure trove of building gossip. I practically power walked out of my apartment, slamming the door a little harder than necessary. My heart was still doing the cha-cha, but a new fiery indignation had started to bubble up.
Something was messing with me, and I was sick of it. Whether it was Mr. Henderson or whatever that was, I needed to get to the bottom of it. My apartment was supposed to be my sanctuary, my bat cave. Now it felt like a haunted house with terrible Wi-Fi. Down in the lobby, Old Man Peterson was exactly where I expected him to be, nestled in his cubbyhole, reading a newspaper. He glanced up as I approached. His eyes, usually sharp, seemed a bit hazy today, like he'd just woken up from a nap. "Morning, Mr. Peterson," I said, trying to sound casual, but my voice was still a little too high-pitched. "Rough night?" He just grunted, folding his newspaper. "Always a rough night when you get to be my age, kid. What's bothering you? You look like you just saw a ghost, or, finally found out who keeps stealing your mail." He had this dry, almost morbid sense of humor. I exhaled, trying to gather my thoughts. Worse than mail, actually. It's the internet, and, Mr. Henderson. I leaned in conspiratorially, my voice dropping. "Honestly, Mr. Peterson, I think that guy's got issues, serious issues. And I'm pretty sure he's behind all the internet problems I've been having. Messing with my connection, doing other stuff. General weirdness. He's probably up to his usual antics, messing with my internet, just like his weird vibes." I tried a half smile, hoping he'd nod along, validating my anti-fan theory. It was my go-to explanation for everything freaky. It made sense, in a twisted, stalkerish way. It was human. Old Man Peterson listened, nodding slowly, his expression unchanging. My half-smile slowly faltered. He didn't look shocked, didn't look surprised. He just looked.
When I finished, he put his newspaper down, then slowly, deliberately, pointed a gnarled finger towards an old, faded notice board on the wall opposite his desk. "Oh, your fiber optics?" he said, his voice level, utterly unruffled. Not a hint of judgment, not a speck of curiosity, just pure, unadulterated calm. "The whole building upgraded years ago. Your place and Henderson's are the only two that refused. Old cable, shared line, so it's bound to be wonky." My hand, which had been idly rubbing the worn fabric of my jeans in my pocket, froze. My smile, which I'd been clinging to like a life raft, just kinda deflated. Wait, what? He continued, completely oblivious to the silent earthquake happening inside my head. "And that kid, poor soul, parents left him when he was little, lives all alone, a bit not right in the head, always muttering to himself. Been like that since he was a kid, just stares into space." Each word was like a tiny hammer blow, chipping away at the elaborate fortress of logic I'd built. Not right in the head? Mutters to himself? Okay, so my eccentric loner theory was more accurate than I thought. A dedicated anti-fan, sure, but also genuinely unwell. That actually made a twisted kind of sense for the strange knocking and staring. Maybe he just didn't realize how unsettling he was. Then came the final blow, the one that didn't just chip away, but detonated the entire damn fortress. And honestly, Old Man Peterson finished, his gaze drifting to a dusty old black and white photograph on his desk, a grainy shot of this very apartment building from back in the 80s. No one ever comes or goes from his place. So vandalism? No way. No one ever comes or goes from his place? The world tilted. My half-smile completely vanished. My eyes, which had been fixed on Old Man Peterson's placid face, lost their focus. They drifted past him, past the mundane notice board, past the bustling street outside, and landed on my own apartment door. Not really landing, more like staring through it, into a bottomless pit that had just opened up in my understanding of everything. Cold sweat bloomed on my back, tracing a chilling path down my spine. It felt like a solid wall. The very foundation of my sanity had just imploded without a sound. My gaze snapped to that old photo on his desk. I'd seen it before, countless times. It was just a snapshot of the old building, nothing special. But now, as Old Man Peterson spoke of Henderson's isolation, something shifted.
In one of the top-floor windows, where light barely touched, a long, blurry shadow, like a stretched-out figure, was peeking down. A detail I knew wasn't in my memory of that picture. A detail that rewrote every past viewing. My past, my present, all of it felt terrifyingly overwritten. And then, as if on cue, as Old Man Peterson's calm voice faded, the ambient sounds of the lobby, which had been a gentle, distant hum, the faint rumble of a passing bus, the tinny laugh track from a TV in a nearby apartment, the distant sirens, they suddenly became unnaturally clear and louder. It wasn't that they physically got louder, but it felt like a thick, invisible soundproofing wall. A wall of my own logic and assumptions had just shattered. The real, chaotic sounds of the world rushed in, raw and unfiltered, swallowing the silent calm I had convinced myself was real. If Mr. Henderson, who lived completely alone and never had visitors, wasn't the one, then who was knocking at my door every time I went live? Who knew about the crooked painting, the coffee mug, the remote, and all those tiny, intimate details of my apartment to leave those comments? Who picked up my USB drive after I dropped it and put it neatly in front of my door? And, flashing back to that terrifying night from my childhood, if it wasn't just the old attic settling or a rat scuttling, then what was that slow, rhythmic creak sound, like something heavy being dragged across the floor in the dark attic all those years ago? What was that? My breath caught in my throat. My vision blurred. What was it?